The notification sound from Keira's laptop made me look up from the breaker box I was rewiring at 11:30 on a Tuesday night. Through the kitchen doorway, I could see her hunched over the screen, wine glass in hand, completely unaware I was listening. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. God, Trent is so clueless, she said to whoever was on the other end of her video call. I swear he'd never notice if I disappeared for a week. He's more interested in his stupid electrical projects than his own wife. I set down my wire strippers and leaned closer to the doorway. The blue glow from her laptop screen lit up her face as she laughed at something someone said. Seriously, Sasha, sometimes I think I married a robot. All he does is work, come home, and tinker with wires in the garage. When's the last time we went somewhere nice? When's the last time he surprised me with anything that didn't come from Home Depot? My jaw clenched. 3 months ago, I'd surprised her with a weekend in Chicago. Cost me $800 I didn't really have. Apparently, that didn't count. A text notification popped up on her screen. Even from 15 feet away, I could see the sender's name, Devin Cross. The message preview made me freeze. That hotel room Friday has your name on it, beautiful. Keira quickly minimized the notification, but not before I saw her smile. Listen, I gotta go, she said to her video call. But yeah, we're still on for tomorrow night. This is going to be so good. She closed the laptop and headed upstairs without even glancing in my direction. I stood there in the semi-darkness of our kitchen, holding a handful of copper wire, wondering if my marriage had just ended, or if it had been falling apart for months and I was too stupid to notice. My name is Trent Mallory. I'm 34 years old, and I've been a commercial electrician in Crane Ridge, Ohio for 12 years. I wire office buildings, shopping centers, and the occasional residential job when I need extra cash. It's honest work that pays decent, and I'm good at it. Really good. I can diagnose electrical problems that stump other guys, and I've never had a job fail inspection. What I apparently can't do is keep my wife interested in me. Keira and I met 6 years ago at a friend's barbecue. She was working as a social media coordinator for a local marketing firm, always posting pictures of food and sunsets and herself in various outfits. She was beautiful, funny, and seemed genuinely interested when I told her about my work. We got married 3 years later in a small ceremony that she live tweeted. I should have seen that as a red flag. Over the past year, she'd gotten more involved in what she called influencer culture. She had 12,000 Instagram followers and was always talking about building her brand and networking events. I tried to be supportive, even when it meant eating dinner alone because she was at some promotional party for a new restaurant or boutique. But this was different. This was betrayal. I finished the wiring job in a daze, my hands working on autopilot while my mind raced. By the time I cleaned up my tools, I'd made a decision. I wasn't going to confront her tonight. I wasn't going to make a scene. I was going to be smart about this. The next morning, Keira was already gone when I woke up. She'd left a note on the kitchen counter. Meeting with clients all day. Don't wait up tonight. Girls' night with Sasha and the crew. Love you. Love you. Right. I called my buddy Eli Martinez, who runs a private security consulting business after 20 years as a cop. If anyone would know how to handle this situation, it was him. You sure about what you saw? Eli asked when I met him for coffee at Murphy's Diner on Main Street. Absolutely sure. Hotel room, Friday night, and she's planning something with her friends for tonight. Eli stirred his coffee thoughtfully. He was a big guy, 42 years old with graying temples and the kind of steady presence that made people tell him their problems. What do you want to do about it? I want proof, real proof, before I blow up my life over a text message. That's smart. Most guys would have already kicked down doors and started screaming. He pulled out a small device that looked like a USB drive. This is a data recovery tool. If she's been deleting messages, this might find them. But Trent, you sure you want to go down this road? Sometimes ignorance really is bliss. I thought about the way she'd smiled at that text message, the way she'd talked about me like I was some pathetic loser who didn't deserve basic respect. I'm sure. That evening, while Keira was out with her friends, I used Eli's device on her laptop. What I found was worse than I'd imagined. Months of deleted text conversations with Devin Cross, who apparently managed social media accounts for local businesses. They'd been meeting at the Riverside Motel every Friday afternoon for 6 weeks. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was the group chat with her friends. "Trent is so boring," she'd written 2 weeks ago. "All he talks about is work. I need someone who actually has ambition." "At least he pays the bills while you figure out your next move," replied someone named Jessica. "True, he's like my safety net. But God, the closeness is terrible. Devin actually knows how to make me feel alive." There were dozens of messages like that. Months of them. My wife discussing our private life, our finances, our future. Like I was some kind of placeholder until something better came along. But the really interesting part was a conversation from earlier that day. Sasha: "So, we're really doing this tomorrow night?" Keira: "Yes, it's going to be hilarious. Poor Trent won't know what hit him." Jessica: "Are you sure this is a good idea? What if he doesn't react the way you think?" Keira: "Trust me, I know him. He'll panic, apologize, and promise to be better. Then I'll have all the leverage I need." Sasha: "And if he calls your bluff?" Keira: "He won't. He's too scared of losing me." I read that exchange 3 times before it sank in. They were planning something for tomorrow night. Something involving me. I spent the next day in a strange state of calm. I went to work, finished wiring a new medical office, and even helped my co-worker Danny troubleshoot a tricky 3-way switch problem. But underneath the normalcy, I was planning. Whatever Keira had in mind for tonight, I was going to be ready. The plan, as it turned out, was even more humiliating than I'd expected. Keira had suggested we go to Meridian, the trendy downtown restaurant where she often attended promotional events. It was the kind of place that charged $28 for what they called artisanal mac and cheese, and had Edison bulb lighting that made everything look like a sepia photograph. We were seated at a table near the center of the dining room when her friends started showing up. Sasha Chen arrived first, a sharp-featured woman in her early 30s who worked in PR and always looked like she was evaluating everyone for their potential usefulness. Then came Jessica and Amanda, both of whom I recognized from various social media posts but had never really talked to. "What a coincidence," Sasha said, with theatrical surprise. "We were just having dinner and saw you two." They pulled up chairs without being invited, and I noticed Jessica had her phone out, positioned to record our table. My stomach tightened. "So, Trent," Sasha said, leaning forward with a predatory smile, "Keira tells us you've been working a lot lately." "Same as always," I replied carefully. "Must be hard, being married to someone so ambitious while you're stuck doing the same old thing every day." Keira shot her a look that said, "Not yet," but Sasha was apparently enjoying herself too much to wait for the signal. "I mean, when's the last time you did something spontaneous? Something exciting? Keira's always talking about how predictable you are." The other women were watching me like I was a lab rat in a maze. Jessica's phone was definitely recording now. "I think there might be some confusion about what kind of evening this is," I said evenly. Keira finally jumped in. "Actually, Trent, I'm glad they're here. I've been thinking a lot lately about us, about our relationship, and I think we need to talk." Here it comes, I thought. She took a deep breath, glanced at her friends for encouragement, and delivered her line. "I think we should break up. I'm done with this marriage." The words hung in the air like smoke. Around us, the restaurant chatter continued, but at our table, everyone was frozen, waiting for my reaction. Jessica's phone was pointed directly at me. Sasha was leaning forward, anticipating the show. Amanda was biting her lip, probably already composing the social media post in her head. They wanted me to panic, to beg, to make a scene that would give them content for weeks. Instead, I reached for my wallet, pulled out a $20 bill, and placed it on the table next to my barely touched appetizer. "All right," I said, standing up. "That covers my part of the bill." Keira's confident expression faltered. "Wait, what? You said you're done. I heard you." I put on my jacket with deliberate calm. "I'll start looking for an apartment tomorrow." The color drained from her face. This wasn't the script she'd written in her head. "Trent, wait. I think there's been a misunderstanding." "No misunderstanding. You were pretty clear." I looked at her friends, who were all staring at me with varying degrees of shock. "Ladies, enjoy your evening. And Jessica, you might want to stop recording now unless you want to explain to the restaurant manager why you're filming other customers without permission." Jessica fumbled with her phone, nearly dropping it. I walked out of Meridian into the cool October night, leaving my wife and her accomplices sitting in stunned silence. Behind me, I could hear Keira's voice rising in panic. "That wasn't supposed to happen. He was supposed to fight for me." The satisfaction of that moment carried me all the way home, but it was just the beginning. Over the next week, I moved with methodical precision. I opened a new bank account and had my paychecks redirected. I found a studio apartment across town and put down a deposit. I made copies of all our financial documents and started documenting everything I'd discovered about Keira's affair. The beautiful thing about being an electrician is that people underestimate you. They think because you work with your hands, you must not be smart enough to work with your head. Keira and her friends had made that mistake. I knew how to plan. I knew how to solve problems. And I knew how to be patient. Keira, meanwhile, was spiraling. She'd been calling and texting constantly since the restaurant incident, alternating between apologies and accusations. "It was just a prank, Trent. We were testing to see how much you cared." "You're being ridiculous. Can't you take a joke?" "Fine. If you want to throw away 6 years of marriage over nothing, that's your choice." I didn't respond to any of it. Instead, I focused on gathering information. Eli helped me trace Devon Cross's background. Turned out he wasn't quite the successful brand manager he pretended to be. He was actually drowning in debt, driving a leased BMW he couldn't afford, and had been fired from his last 2 jobs for what his former employers diplomatically called reliability issues. More importantly, he had a girlfriend, a serious girlfriend named Monica, who worked as a nurse at Crane Ridge General and had no idea her boyfriend was spending Friday afternoons at cheap motels. "What are you thinking?" Eli asked when I showed him what I'd found. "I'm thinking Monica deserves to know the truth. And after that, we see how much Keira really loves her exciting boyfriend when he's not available anymore." I sent Monica an anonymous email with screenshots of the text messages between Keira and Devon. I included the hotel receipts I'd found on Keira's laptop and a few particularly graphic messages about their Friday afternoon activities. The explosion was spectacular. By Monday morning, Devon's social media accounts were gone. By Tuesday, Monica had posted a Facebook status that didn't mention names, but made it very clear what she thought about lying, cheating scumbags and the desperate women who enable them. Keira called me in tears. "Devon won't return my calls. His girlfriend found out about us and she's telling everyone. My reputation is ruined." "That's terrible," I said with mock sympathy. "Maybe you should have thought about that before you decided to cheat on your husband. It wasn't supposed to be like this. It was just supposed to be fun. Actions have consequences, Keira. I thought someone with your business expertise would understand that." She hung up on me, but I wasn't done, not even close. The next phase of my plan required a little more creativity. Keira's friend group had been the audience for her humiliation of me, and they'd participated enthusiastically. They'd earned some consequences of their own. I started with Jessica, who worked as a marketing coordinator for a local real estate company. It turned out she'd been using her company's social media accounts to promote her own side business selling essential oils. Her boss probably wouldn't appreciate knowing that she was violating her employment contract and potentially exposing the company to liability issues. A few screenshots sent to the right email address took care of that problem. Amanda was trickier. She was a freelance graphic designer who mostly worked with small businesses around town. But she'd made the mistake of posting some very unprofessional opinions about her clients on her personal Instagram account. Screenshots of those posts, sent anonymously to the business owners she'd insulted, dried up her client base pretty quickly. Sasha was the real prize, though. She worked for Henderson and Associates, a mid-sized PR firm that represented several major clients in the region. She was also, according to the evidence I'd gathered, embezzling money from the company's petty cash account to fund her expensive lifestyle. I didn't send that information anywhere. Yet. I was saving Sasha for last. Meanwhile, Keira was discovering that her influencer career wasn't as stable as she'd thought. Funny how quickly sponsors lose interest when your personal brand becomes associated with messy relationship drama. Her follower count was dropping daily as the story of her failed restaurant prank spread through Crane Ridge's social media circles. She tried to do damage control, posting carefully crafted messages about growing as a person and learning from mistakes. But the internet is unforgiving, especially when someone's mistakes involve publicly humiliating their spouse for entertainment. 2 weeks after the restaurant incident, she showed up at my new apartment. "We need to talk," she said when I opened the door. She looked terrible. Her usually perfect hair was unwashed, and she was wearing sweatpants and an old college t-shirt I hadn't seen in years. "I'm listening," I said, but I didn't invite her in. "I know you're angry, and you have every right to be. What I did was horrible. The prank, the affair, all of it. But we can fix this, Trent. We can go to counseling, work through our problems." "What problems?" I interrupted. "I thought I was just boring and predictable. I thought you needed someone more exciting." Her face crumpled. "I was stupid. I was selfish. Devin was he was just a fantasy. You're real. You're solid. You're the one who's always been there for me. Right up until the moment you decided to publicly humiliate me for your friend's entertainment. It was Sasha's idea. She said it would be funny, that you'd laugh about it later. I never meant to hurt you." That was interesting. Sasha's idea. "So you're saying your best friend convinced you to fake dump your husband in a crowded restaurant while your other friends filmed it, and you thought that was a good idea?" "When you put it like that, it sounds insane." "It was insane, Keira, and cruel. And the affair with Devin? Whose idea was that?" She couldn't meet my eyes. That was me. I was feeling neglected, unappreciated. You never seemed to notice me anymore. I worked 60 hours a week to pay for this house you had to have, in the neighborhood you picked, so you could focus on building your social media career. How exactly was I neglecting you? It wasn't about money. No, it was about respect. And you had so little respect for me that you aired our private business to your friends, cheated on me for 6 weeks, and then tried to humiliate me in public for fun. She was crying now. "Please, Trent. I know I screwed up, but we can fix this. I'll do whatever it takes." I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. "The divorce papers will be ready next week," I said. "You can keep the house if you can afford the mortgage on your own. I'll take my tools and my truck and we'll call it even." "You can't be serious." "Absolutely serious. Oh, and Keira? You might want to have a conversation with Sasha about her expense account at Henderson and Associates. I have a feeling her bosses are going to be asking some uncomfortable questions soon." Her tears stopped abruptly. "What are you talking about?" "Ask her. I'm sure she'll explain everything." I closed the door and listened to her footsteps retreating down the hallway. Part of me felt bad for her, but a bigger part remembered the way she'd smiled when she delivered her practiced breakup line, expecting me to fall apart for her friend's amusement. Some bridges, once burned, can't be rebuilt. The next morning, I sent the evidence of Sasha's embezzlement to her boss at Henderson and Associates. By noon, she was cleaning out her desk. By evening, she was calling me. "You bastard," she said when I answered the phone. "You destroyed my career. I documented your crimes. You destroyed your own career. This isn't over." "Yeah, it is. And Sasha? Next time you want to manipulate someone into humiliating themselves for your entertainment, maybe pick someone who doesn't know how to use a computer." She hung up, but not before I heard her start to cry. I should have felt satisfied. The plan was working perfectly. Keira's affair had imploded, her friends were facing consequences for their actions, and I was free to start over without the weight of a marriage that had become a joke. But something was bothering me. Something about the way Keira had said it was Sasha's idea, with such conviction. I decided to do a little more digging. What I found changed everything. Hidden in the depths of Sasha's social media history, buried in old posts and tagged photos, was a connection I hadn't expected. 5 years ago, Sasha had briefly worked for Hartwell Construction, the company I'd been employed with before going independent. She'd been fired after 3 months for what the HR records called interpersonal conflicts with management and coworkers. I remembered her now. Sarah Chen back then, not Sasha. She'd worked in the office, handling scheduling and client communications. She'd been fired after multiple complaints about her attitude and several incidents where she'd misunderstood instructions in ways that cost the company money. I'd been the one who'd reported her final mistake, a deliberate scheduling error that had cost us a major client and nearly gotten me fired in the process. This wasn't about Keira's marriage. This was about revenge. Sasha had spent 5 years working her way into my wife's social circle, becoming her best friend, gaining her trust. She'd encouraged the affair with Devon, planned the restaurant humiliation, and orchestrated the whole thing as payback for a job she'd lost half a decade ago. Keira had been played just as much as I had. The realization should have made me angrier, but instead, it clarified everything. I knew exactly what I needed to do. I called Keira. "We need to meet," I said when she answered. "There's something you need to know about your friend Sasha." We met at Murphy's Diner, the same place where Eli and I had planned my initial response to her betrayal. Keira looked hopeful when she saw me, probably thinking I was ready to reconcile. "This isn't about us getting back together," I said before she could speak. "This is about you understanding what really happened to your life." I laid out everything I'd discovered about Sasha's history, her connection to me, and her systematic manipulation of our marriage. Keira's face went through a series of emotions: disbelief, recognition, horror, and finally, rage. "She planned all of this," she whispered. "The whole thing. She's the one who introduced me to Devon. She's the one who kept telling me you didn't appreciate me. She pushed me to have the affair, convinced me to do the restaurant thing. She played you perfectly. Used your insecurities, your desire for excitement, your need for approval from your friends. She turned you into a weapon against me and made you think it was your idea." Keira was quiet for a long time, processing the magnitude of the betrayal. "What are we going to do?" she finally asked. "We?" "I know I don't have the right to ask, but she destroyed both of our lives. She needs to pay for what she did." I studied my wife's face. Even after everything that had happened, part of me still cared about her. She'd made terrible choices, but she'd been manipulated by someone who'd spent years planning her destruction. "The divorce still happens," I said. "Too much has been broken to fix, but yeah, Sasha needs to face consequences for what she did." Keira nodded, tears streaming down her face. "What did you have in mind?" I smiled, and for the first time in weeks, it was genuine. "Leave that to me." The Crane Ridge Business Excellence Awards ceremony was held every November at the Riverside Convention Center. It was the kind of event where local professionals networked, companies showed off their community involvement, and people like Sasha rebuilt their reputations after career setbacks. Despite being fired from Henderson and Associates, Sasha had managed to land a new job with a smaller PR firm and was already working to rehabilitate her image. She'd even been nominated for a Rising Professional Award, probably through some combination of charm and strategic networking. She had no idea I was going to be there. I'd bought a ticket using a fake name and arrived early to set up. The convention center's audio-visual system was surprisingly sophisticated, and thanks to my electrical background, I knew exactly how to access it. The evening started normally. Local business leaders gave speeches about economic development and community partnership. Awards were presented for various categories of achievement. Sasha, dressed in an expensive black dress that probably cost more than she could afford, worked the room like the professional manipulator she was. When they called her name for the Rising Professional Award, she walked to the stage with perfect confidence, accepting the crystal trophy and stepping up to the microphone to give her acceptance speech. "Thank you so much for this honor," she began. "Over the past year, I've learned that success isn't just about professional achievement. It's about the relationships we build, the trust we earn, and the integrity we bring to every interaction." The irony was beautiful. I've had the privilege of working with some amazing clients and colleagues who've taught me that authenticity is the foundation of any successful career. That was my cue. The main screen behind her flickered and changed from the awards ceremony logo to something much more interesting, a compilation of text messages, social media posts, and recorded phone calls documenting her 5-year campaign to destroy my marriage. The audience gasped as they saw message after message showing Sasha encouraging Keira to cheat, planning the restaurant humiliation, and celebrating each step of my personal destruction. But the real showstopper was the audio recording I'd made of our final phone conversation, where she'd admitted to orchestrating everything and threatened that this isn't over. Sasha spun around to see what had captured the audience's attention and went white as a sheet. She fumbled for words, but the microphone had been muted remotely. The presentation continued with screenshots of her embezzlement from Henderson and Associates, her history of workplace conflicts, and her pattern of using personal relationships to advance her career at others' expense. By the time the lights came back up, half the audience was recording with their phones, and the other half was already posting to social media. Sasha's carefully rebuilt reputation was collapsing in real time. She spotted me in the crowd and tried to push through the stunned audience to reach me, but security was already moving in her direction. The convention center staff wanted answers about how their AV system had been compromised, and several of her former colleagues were demanding explanations about the evidence they'd just seen. I slipped out the back exit before anyone could connect me to the technical sabotage, but not before I heard Sasha screaming my name across the crowded ballroom. The story exploded across Crane Ridge's social media within hours. Local PR professional exposed as marriage destroyer was trending on Facebook by midnight. The screenshots and audio clips were shared hundreds of times, and Sasha's new employer issued a statement the next morning announcing her immediate termination. More importantly, the truth about what had happened to my marriage was finally public. Keira, who'd been dealing with months of social media harassment over the restaurant incident, was suddenly seen as a victim rather than a villain. It didn't save our marriage, but it gave her a chance to rebuild her life without carrying the full weight of blame for something she'd been manipulated into doing. We finalized our divorce 3 weeks later in a lawyer's office downtown. It was surprisingly amicable, considering everything that had happened. "I'm sorry," she said as we signed the last of the paperwork. "For all of it. I know that doesn't fix anything, but I need you to know that I'm sorry." "I know," I replied. "And for what it's worth, I'm sorry too. Sorry that we let someone else's poison destroy what we had." She nodded, tears in her eyes. "Do you think we would have made it if Sasha hadn't interfered?" I thought about it honestly. I don't know. We had problems before she showed up, but we deserved the chance to work through them ourselves. Yeah, we did. We shook hands outside the lawyer's office, and that was the end of our marriage, but it wasn't the end of the story. 2 months later, I was finishing up a wiring job at a new medical complex when my phone rang. It was Detective Ray Morrison from the Crane Ridge Police Department. "Mr. Mallory, We need to talk to you about Sasha Chen. What about her? She's been arrested for stalking and harassment. Your name came up in connection with some threats she made. Can you come down to the station? It turned out that Sasha's public humiliation at the awards ceremony had pushed her over the edge. She'd been following me for weeks, documenting my schedule, taking pictures of my apartment, and sending anonymous threats through various online platforms. The police had traced the harassment back to her after she'd made the mistake of using her real credit card to purchase a burner phone. When they searched her apartment, they'd found detailed plans for what she called Phase 2 of her revenge against me. She had blueprints of your apartment building, Detective Morrison explained, photos of your truck, your work schedule, even the route you take to your job sites. She was planning something, Mr. Mallory. We just don't know what. I gave them everything I had on Sasha's history and her role in destroying my marriage. The evidence I'd presented at the award ceremony, combined with her recent stalking behavior, painted a picture of someone who'd become dangerously obsessed with revenge. She was charged with multiple felonies and eventually sentenced to 3 years in prison, followed by 5 years of supervised probation with a restraining order that prohibited any contact with me or Keira. The day she was sentenced, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months. Peace. It was over. Really over. I rebuilt my life, slowly and deliberately. I expanded my electrical business, hired 2 employees, and started taking on bigger commercial projects. I bought a house in a quiet neighborhood across town and filled it with tools, books, and the kind of comfortable furniture that's built to last, rather than to impress. Keira moved back to her hometown in Michigan to be closer to her family. We exchanged Christmas cards for a couple of years, polite updates on our separate lives, but eventually even that contact faded away. Jessica and Amanda both left Craneridge after their careers imploded. I heard through mutual acquaintances that Jessica was working at a call center in Columbus, and Amanda had given up graphic design to become a substitute teacher. Devin Cross disappeared entirely after Monica posted their breakup story on social media. Last I heard, he was living with his parents in Toledo and working at a cell phone store. As for me, I learned something important through the whole ordeal. I'm not the boring, predictable man Keira thought I was. I'm methodical, patient, and strategic. When someone tries to destroy my life, I don't get mad and make mistakes. I get even, and I do it right.